The sea stretched endlessly, a shimmering sheet of silver under the pale morning sun, as if the entire world had been polished for the grand voyage of the Titanic. The majestic ship sliced through the calm Atlantic waters with a kind of regal confidence, every ripple echoing its pride. Passengers crowded the decks, their faces lit with excitement, expectation, and curiosity. Among these glittering souls was Rose DeWitt Bukater, a young woman admired for her beauty, envied for her fortune, and misunderstood by almost everyone around her. Rose stood at the rails of the upper deck, the cold metal pressing against her gloved hands. Her deep red hair danced in the wind, loose strains brushing against her cheeks. The world saw her life as perfect, wealth, status, and a fiancé who belonged to the highest social circles. But inside her heart, there was a silent cry for freedom. Her life felt scripted, controlled. Every smile she wore was carefully placed, every step measured, every word chosen to fit the expectations of the world she was born into. She watched the horizon where the sky met the sea, a line so distant that it seemed to promise a different world, one where she could breathe without judgment. She whispered under her breath, "If only I could fly away." The ship creaked softly as it moved, the sound almost answering her loneliness. Behind her, Caledon Hockley walked with heavy steps of entitlement, his coat neatly arranged, his hair slicked back flawlessly. He approached Rose with the air of a man who believed the world existed to serve him. "Rose, my dear," he said, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder, "try to enjoy yourself. This voyage is meant to be remembered." Rose nodded mechanically, forcing a polite smile. Her mother, Ruth, watched closely from a few steps away, her gloved hands folded elegantly, her stern gaze monitoring every move. "Stand properly, Rose," she said through a tight smile. People are watching. That was the problem, people were always watching. Meanwhile, in the lower decks, laughter echoed through the hallways. A young man with bright blue eyes and golden hair leaned back in his chair, sketching the lively scene around him. Jack Dawson, with nothing but a few dollars to his name, lived with a heart full of dreams. His charm lit every corner he stepped into. For him, life was an adventure, unpredictable, dangerous, and beautiful. He tapped his pencil on the paper playfully as he finished sketching an old man playing the accordion. "That's the spirit," he said with a grin. His friend, Fabrizio, leaned over his shoulder. "Jack, you make everyone look more beautiful than in real life." Jack laughed. "No, I just draw the truth of them." The laughter and music below were so different from the stiff silence above. Jack loved it. He felt at home in chaos, among people who lived with real emotions, where nothing was pretended. But sometimes, when he looked up at the higher decks, he wondered what kind of lives the rich lived. Did they ever laugh the way ordinary people did? Did they ever feel truly alive? That afternoon, destiny began weaving the first threads of a story that would change everything. Rose stepped away from her mother and fiancé, desperate for a moment of solitude. Her breathing felt tight, her chest constricted by the invisible expectations that surrounded her. She descended to a quieter part of the ship, where no one would notice her absence. The metal railings glimmered faintly under the glow of lantern light. Jack, wandering freely along the ship with his sketchbook under his arm, happened to pass by the same area. He paused when he saw Rose leaning dangerously over the railing, her knuckles white around the metal. Her breath came in uneven waves, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Jack felt a twist in his chest. Something told him to approach cautiously, gently. "You shouldn't be so close to the edge," he said softly. Rose gasped and turned sharply. She wiped her tears quickly, trying to gather herself. "What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled. He held his hands up in peace. "Just passing by, but it looks like you're the one who needs someone right now." She stared at him, confused by the sincerity in his eyes. People in her world rarely spoke gently. Every word there came with hidden intentions. But Jack's voice was different, warm, human. "I'm fine," she lied, turning her face away. "You don't look fine," Jack said, stepping a little closer, "and for what it's worth, I've been there. Feeling trapped, feeling like everything around you is a cage. It's a terrible feeling." Rose stiffened. His words were too accurate. It felt like he had pulled a secret out of her soul. Her breathing faltered. "You don't know anything about me," she whispered. Jack leaned on the railing beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to feel like the world's too heavy." For a moment, Rose couldn't speak. She wanted to be strong, but the sadness inside her cracked. "I can't breathe in this life," she murmured. Every day feels like drowning in expectations. Jack looked at her with a deep empathy that surprised her. Then maybe you just need to find the part of yourself they can't control. The ship hummed beneath them, the ocean whispering quietly as if listening. Before Rose could respond, they heard approaching voices, Cal's angry call and Ruth's anxious footsteps. Rose stepped back immediately, wiping her tears again, trying to compose herself. Jack saw the transformation, the quick mask she wore so effortlessly. It broke his heart. Cal reached her in moments, grabbing her arm. "Where have you been? Do you realize how improper this is?" His anger flared. "And who is this boy?" Jack stood straight, but not aggressively. "Just someone passing by." Ruth's eyes narrowed in disdain. "This is why you shouldn't wander alone, Rose. You attract all sorts of people." Jack felt the sting of the words, but he didn't respond. Rose looked at him for a brief second, her eyes full of apology. Cal pulled her away. Jack watched them leave, feeling a strange pull in his chest. He had only spoken to her for a few moments, but something about her loneliness stayed with him. As he walked away, he whispered to himself, "She's trapped in a golden cage." That night, Rose lay in her luxurious cabin, staring at the ceiling adorned with intricate carvings. The silence around her felt suffocating. She remembered Jack's words, his eyes filled with sincerity. No one had ever spoken to her like that, with honesty, without agenda. In the lower deck, Jack sketched the memory of Rose's sad expression. He tried to capture the weight she carried, the silent plea for freedom in her eyes. He didn't know why she lingered in his thoughts, but he felt connected to her in a way he couldn't explain. The next morning, as the ship glowed under the bright sun, Rose walked the upper deck again. This time, when she turned a corner, she spotted Jack leaning against a railing, sketching the ocean. She hesitated, unsure if approaching him was wise. Yet something inside her pushed her forward. Jack looked up and smiled lightly. "Morning." Rose returned a small but genuine smile. "Good morning." They stood quietly for a moment, the wind brushing past them. Then Rose exhaled slowly. "About yesterday, thank you." Jack shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. But I want to," Rose insisted softly. I don't have people I can talk to like that." Jack watched her carefully. "You can talk to me, if you want." For the first time in years, Rose felt her heart relax. Someone had offered her something simple yet precious, human connection. They walked together along the deck, talking freely. Jack told her about his adventures, his dreams of traveling the world, living life with passion. Rose listened with fascination. His perspective was unlike anything she had heard before. "You make life sound so easy," she said. Jack exhaled. "It's not easy. It's just mine, and that makes it worth living." Rose looked away, her voice barely audible. "I wish I could say the same." Jack turned to her, gently brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe you can, someday." Her heart thumped hard at his touch. She didn't pull away, and just like that, something began between them, slow, fragile, but undeniably real. Jack and Rose continued walking along the deck, the sunlight warming their faces as the ocean stretched endlessly around them. Rose felt lighter than she had in a long time, as if each step she took beside Jack loosened the chains wrapped around her heart. His presence was calming yet thrilling, a strange mix that made her feel alive. She glanced at him from the corner of her eye, noticing the way the wind played with his hair and how effortlessly he seemed to exist, as though the world itself bent kindly toward him. "You really just travel with nothing but a sketchbook?" she asked. Jack laughed lightly. "Pretty much. I win a little money here, draw a little there, and the world keeps moving. I keep moving with it." Rose shook her head in disbelief. "It sounds impossible." "It's not impossible," Jack replied softly. "It's just different. You'd be surprised how little a person needs to be happy." His words struck a nerve inside her chest. She had everything: clothes, jewels, status, a future secured by wealth. Yet she felt emptier than anyone she'd ever met. Meanwhile, Jack, with almost nothing, was happier than everyone in her world combined. They stopped at the bow of the ship, the wind stronger there, making Rose's hair dance wildly. Jack stepped closer to the railing and looked back at her with a mischievous spark in his eyes. "Come here." Rose frowned. "Why?" "You'll see." He extended his hand to her. "Trust me." The words echoed in her mind. Trust. Something she had never been allowed to give freely. Yet she placed her hand in his without hesitation. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and steady. With gentle movements, he guided her toward the railing. "Close your eyes," he whispered. Rose hesitated for a moment but obeyed, letting the darkness sharpen the sound of waves beneath her. Jack stepped behind her, placing his hands over hers on the railing. "Now, open them." Rose opened her eyes and gasped softly. The ship cut through the ocean like a bird gliding through the sky. The wind blew against her face with exhilarating force. The horizon looked infinite. For the first time in her life, she felt weightless. Jack whispered near her ear, "There. Now you're flying." Those simple words carried a power she felt deep in her bones. She wasn't trapped in that moment. She wasn't performing for society. She wasn't pretending. She was alive, truly alive. She smiled, leaning back just slightly against him, and Jack's breath caught. He felt the warmth of her body, the trust she had placed in him. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The world around them faded until there was only the wind, the ocean, and the two of them sharing a moment nobody else could claim. When they finally stepped back, Rose's cheeks were flushed. She struggled for the right word. "Freedom," Jack offered. Rose nodded slowly. "Yes, freedom." As they continued walking, Rose noticed something in Jack's expression she hadn't seen before, a quiet admiration, maybe even awe. She felt her heart flutter with a dangerous thrill. She was meant to marry Cal. Her future had already been written by others. But Jack's presence made her question everything. Later that day, as the sun dipped low, Rose returned to her first-class cabin. The hallway glittered with polished wood and golden decor, but everything felt suffocating after her time with Jack. Ruth stood near the vanity, her posture stiff and elegant. "You disappeared again," Ruth said sharply. "Cal was looking for you." Rose unbuttoned her gloves slowly, keeping her back turned. "I was just walking." "A lady of your status does not simply wander around the ship," Ruth scolded. "And certainly not without informing anyone." Rose turned to face her mother. "Why? So you can control every breath I take." Ruth's eyebrows arched in offense. "You speak like a child." "I speak like someone who wants to live her own life," Rose countered. Before Ruth could answer, Cal walked in. His presence instantly chilled the air. He gave Rose a smile that was more of a performance than a genuine gesture. "Rose, darling, you look unsettled." "Everything fine." She forced a calm expression. "Yes, I'm fine." Cal stepped closer, brushing a hand along her arm in a gesture meant to appear affectionate but felt possessive instead. "Dinner tonight will be important," he said. "Some influential men will be there. I expect you to behave accordingly." Rose's jaw tightened. "Of course." As the door closed behind him and Ruth, Rose sank onto the bed, exhaling deeply. Her world felt like a cage again, elegant, beautiful, gold-plated, but still a cage. Down in the third-class cabins, Jack and Fabrizio played cards with a small group of passengers. The room buzzed with laughter, the kind that came naturally, free of formality. But Jack's thoughts drifted back to Rose. He tried to focus on the game, but her face kept appearing in his mind, the way her eyes lit up at the bow, the way she breathed in the wind as if tasting freedom for the first time. Fabrizio nudged him. "Jack, you losing on purpose?" Jack blinked. "What? No." His friend smirked. "You thinking about her?" Jack shrugged but didn't deny it. "She's different. There's something about her." Fabrizio leaned back. "She is first class. You are not. That world is not for you." Jack sighed, tapping his cards against the table. "I know, but that doesn't change what I feel." Fabrizio softened. "Just be careful, amico." That evening, the grand dining hall shimmered with elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast soft golden light across the room, illuminating the polished silverware and velvet chairs. Rose walked in wearing a deep blue gown that hugged her waist beautifully. She looked stunning, but the light in her eyes had dimmed under the weight of expectation. Cal introduced her to businessmen, politicians, and wealthy families. She smiled politely, responded with grace, but inside she felt empty. Their conversations were rehearsed, shallow, predictable. She wanted something real. When the dinner finally ended, Cal placed a firm hand on her lower back. "We'll join my associates for drinks," he instructed. Rose shook her head. "I'd like to walk a bit." Cal frowned. "Now?" "Yes," she replied with a surprising firmness. "I need some air." He didn't argue, but the irritation in his eyes made it clear he disapproved. Rose slipped away, climbing the stairs to the open deck. The night was cool and quiet. She wrapped her arms around herself, breathing deeply. She felt lonely despite being surrounded by people all day. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar figure leaning against the railing, the figure she had hoped to see. Jack turned when he heard footsteps, his face lighting up instantly. "Hey." Rose felt her heart lift. Hi. He walked toward her, slipping his hands into his pockets. You look tired. She laughed sadly. That's one way to put it. Jack stepped closer, his voice soft. Want to talk about it? Rose looked into his eyes, the eyes that held no judgment, no expectations. Only truth. Yes, she whispered. They walked together under the stars. Rose told him about her life, her mother's expectations, Cal's control, the suffocating routine she endured. Jack listened quietly, his eyes full of compassion. You're not living, he said gently. You're just existing. Rose's throat tightened. I know. You deserve more, Jack continued. You deserve to feel alive. To choose your own path. Rose felt tears prick her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. No one had ever spoken to her like that. They reached a quiet corner of the deck. Jack hesitated for a moment, then reached for her hand. Rose didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally, softly, perfectly. Jack, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotions she had never dared feel. I don't know what's happening to me. He lifted her hand and pressed it gently against his chest, where his heartbeat thumped steady and strong. Maybe for once, you're feeling what it means to be alive. Rose's breath shook. Their faces were close, their hearts closer. The ship rocked gently beneath them, the stars glowing above. And in that moment, without speaking, both knew something powerful was beginning, something neither was prepared for, yet both desperately needed. The days that followed moved in a strange, exhilarating rhythm. Rose found herself seeking Jack's company at every possible moment. A glance in the hallway, a shared look across the deck, even a brief conversation in passing, it was enough to make her heart race as if she were a young girl discovering life for the first time. Jack, in turn, was captivated by her intelligence, her subtle humor, the way her eyes could sparkle even when weighed down by the burdens of a world she didn't belong to. One afternoon, Jack invited Rose to the third-class deck, a place she had never been permitted. The music was lively, the smell of roasted food and fresh bread mingled with laughter and shouts. Children ran past with bare feet, musicians played accordions and fiddles, and men and women danced together with joyous abandon. Rose stepped cautiously at first, feeling out of place among the simple, rough clothing of the passengers. Jack took her hand. Come on, he said, grinning. It's not fancy, but it's real. Rose hesitated for a moment, then allowed herself to be led into the crowd. At first, she felt stiff, her movements awkward, but as the music carried her, something inside loosened. Her laughter, unpracticed and genuine, rang out across the deck. Jack twirled her in the dance, spinning her until her gown flared like a wave in the ocean wind. She felt her heart lighten with each step, her lungs filling with a joy she hadn't felt in years. Jack, she whispered, breathless, I haven't laughed like this in forever. You're supposed to, he replied softly, his eyes sparkling. Life's too short not to. The sun was dipping toward the horizon when they finally stopped, leaning against the railing together, sweat glistening on their foreheads. Rose rested her head lightly against Jack's shoulder, feeling the warmth of him. For a brief moment, the chaos of the ship, the expectations of her family, and the pressures of her life melted away. They returned to the upper deck, where the ocean stretched endlessly into twilight. The wind carried a chill, but the warmth of their closeness made it bearable. Rose turned to Jack, her expression soft and vulnerable. I don't know how this is possible, she murmured. You make me feel free, alive. I've never felt that before. Jack smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maybe that's what freedom feels like, he said. It's not about money, or status, or who owns what. It's about living fully, even if only for a few moments. Rose shivered slightly, not from the cold, but from the intimacy of his words. She realized, with a mix of excitement and fear, that she was falling for him. And Jack was already there. She could see it in the way he looked at her, the way he lingered in her presence, the quiet intensity in his eyes. That night, as the ship rocked gently through the dark waters, Rose lay in her cabin, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed every moment with Jack, every word, every touch, every glance. She could feel her world shifting, her heart defying the rules she had been taught. Down in the lower decks, Jack could not sleep either. He drew sketches of the ocean at night, the stars reflected in the water, and the girl who had captured his attention completely. He didn't know how it had happened so fast, how someone from a world so far from his own could mean so much to him, but he knew that he would not let her slip away. The following days were filled with stolen moments. Rose would slip away from her first-class lessons and engagements, finding Jack on the deck, sketching, or sitting quietly with him as they shared stories about their pasts, their dreams, and their fears. Jack told her about his life in America, about the time he had traveled with nothing but hope and a sketchbook, about the freedom of being untethered. Rose shared with him the loneliness behind her wealth, the suffocating expectations, and the fear that she would never truly live her life. Each encounter brought them closer, a bond forged through shared honesty, laughter, and a mutual understanding that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. They were from different places, different classes, yet they were drawn together in a way neither could resist. One evening, Jack led Rose to the stern of the ship. The sunset painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, reflecting brilliantly off the water. They stood together, the wind whipping their hair and clothes. Jack took her hand in his, guiding her to the edge once more. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly. Rose hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes." Jack smiled and guided her carefully to lean over the railing. The wind tugged at her hair and gown, and the vast ocean stretched endlessly before them. Rose's heart raced. The feeling of weightlessness, of possibility, coursing through her veins, was intoxicating. "I'm flying, Jack," she whispered, laughing with pure, unbridled joy. Jack held her gently, his own heart pounding. "You are free," he said. "No one can take this from you." Their connection deepened with each passing day, yet the shadow of reality always lingered. Cal became increasingly suspicious of Rose's absence and the subtle changes in her demeanor. His possessiveness grew, his charm becoming more calculated and controlling. Ruth, her mother, continued to pressure Rose to secure the marriage and maintain appearances, oblivious to the way her daughter's heart was changing. Despite this, Jack and Rose found ways to meet in secret. They would wander the decks under the moonlight, sharing dreams and stolen kisses, their hearts entwined in a world where nothing else mattered. They spoke of love, of adventure, of freedom, the kind of freedom that money could not buy and social status could not define. But life, as always, was fragile. One cold April night, the Titanic's journey was interrupted by the unseen danger lurking beneath the waves. The ship struck an iceberg with a deep, jarring shudder, followed by a sound that resonated through every deck, every cabin, every heart on board. Passengers stirred in alarm, crew members rushed to their posts. The first realization of the disaster struck slowly, but then fear spread like wildfire. Jack's eyes met Rose's immediately. "Stay close to me," he said. The tension in his voice, usually calm and playful, was now taut with urgency. The world erupted into chaos as the ship began to tilt, water seeping in. Cal tried to assert control, directing his servants and Rose toward lifeboats, his arrogance replaced with panic. But Rose refused to leave Jack's side. "I'm not leaving you," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Jack gripped her hand tightly. "We'll get through this together. Just stay with me." The two navigated the panicked crowds, the icy water reaching their feet, the groaning of the great ship echoing in their ears. They climbed staircases, dodged falling debris, and supported each other as chaos unfolded around them. Jack's steady presence gave Rose courage, even as fear threatened to overwhelm them. When the Titanic began to break apart, the sheer magnitude of the disaster became undeniable. Rose found herself on a floating piece of wood, shivering violently, the frigid water pulling at her limbs. Jack held her hand, ensuring she remained secure. "You have to survive, Rose," he whispered fiercely. "Promise me." "I promise," she said, tears streaming down her face. Jack's strength began to fade in the icy waters. He pressed her hand against his chest one final time. "Live, Rose. Live, fully, freely, and never forget." The ocean claimed him, but his love remained. Rose, floating on the wooden board, clung to life, to the promise, to Jack. When rescue boats arrived at dawn, she was found, exhausted but alive, the vast ocean behind her holding the memory of him. Years later, Rose reflected on the love she had known aboard the Titanic. Though time had passed, though the world had moved on, Jack's presence lingered in her heart. He had shown her freedom, love, courage, and a chance to live life on her own terms. The world knew Titanic as a tragedy, but for Rose, it was the place she discovered who she truly was, and who she could be.